It's Sunday. Well, some things happened this weekend, didn't they? Let's get into it. Howdy, folks. Welcome to another show. Good to be here. For those of you still in a heat wave, I hope you're surviving the heat. We're getting back into one where I'm at. Say hello to a few people here in the chat. We've got J.L. Warren is here, and he was first. Good to see you. Jamie Richardson's here. Pragmatic Crystal. Hello, and thank you for these reminders. Posting some of my social media links in there. Anthony Palma is here. Maya is here. JL may have been first, but I'm best. I'll leave you guys to fight over that one. Let's see, Spooky is here. Good to see Spooky. Dustin. And Mr. Mowdy is here. Good to see you, Christopher Mowdy. Some guy. Hello. Rodent. Michael Deaton is here. Good to see you. Warren is here. Red Fang is here. Good to see you. Floyd is here. Good to see you, Floyd, because he's tagged in the title for this one because it's him talking to a lot of people were wondering who's Doug talking to in the video that I'm going to be dealing with today. This particular video here. He's talking to Floyd. So full screen this. And just for the sake of setting some things straight here, this is his, as you can see up there, how to get an anti-Trumper to admit it's okay to vote for Trump. And I'm assuming the anti-Trumper in this case is Floyd FP. And so we're going to see how this plays out. Does Doug get Floyd to admit that it's okay to vote for Trump? And to what extent? You know, it would be my other thing. Maria McIntyre is here. Good to see you. We're down to 105, down from 115. Good God. California or Nevada? Arizona? Let's see, and I think that's everybody. And AR is here. Kent Hovens, I'm not door dashing. I can pay attention. Oh, good. Even if you can't pay attention, it's okay. You can always catch up later. So yeah, so there a few things happened this week. This particular video happened, and I wanted to take a look at it. Pocket Locker 86 or Jay. He already covered this one a couple of nights ago, and I watched it, and he was pretty animated over this one. Covered at least this, maybe something else. So I'm going to jump into this one and then probably get into. I don't really want to talk too much about yesterday's events, the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, because there's still a lot of investigations going on, and there is an enormous amount of social media speculation that is frankly insane. So I don't think it's even really worth commenting on yet. The only thing that you can comment on at this point is all the commenting going on, and that's just kind of adding to the cacophony of unintelligible uselessness at this point. So I'll wait and see. I'll probably do something in the middle of the week and see where we go from there. Floyd says, so anyway, I'm going to be concentrating on this video first, and then maybe we'll get into some of the shorts that Doug's made, because he's been very enthusiastically making shorts in light of yesterday's events. Floyd says, it's never okay to vote for Trump. Doug is just saying, if you ignore all the bad things about Trump, then isn't it okay to vote for Trump? But should we ignore those bad things? Exactly. Yeah. And from what little bit I saw of this, because I jumped in on Jay's coverage of this, and he was already mostly through the video, I think. And even the points that I saw there while I was there to kind of, view and support Jay's his live stream, I didn't think that anything was coming through as very persuasive, but Nitty is here as well. Good to see you, Nitty. All right, so let's get into this. I think I'll leave it at this size. Floyd does not appear on camera in this thing. That's not a criticism of Floyd. I take it because of Floyd's stature in the great debate community. That's, Doug's not going to give him any static for not showing up, So here we go. How to get an anti-Trumper, Floyd, to admit that it's okay to vote for Trump. Let's see what kind of points he's got here for us.
But getting back to like one of the first things you said was, I think it's in my best interest, which is kind of an arrogant thing for you to say. Like, what's best for me to vote for Biden rather than Trump. But immigration is a huge issue for me. I'm an immigrant. And what I've seen happen the last 3-4 years, I shake my head at. I do not want to continue.
Well, Biden is trying to, put some limits on it. You hear MAGA people saying, "No, Biden opened up the borders." No, that's not. I mean, that's not true.
It's not.
It's not true that Biden at least made borders more open. Is that true?
No, Doug. He did make them more. He made them more open than COVID did. That's the thing that guys like Doug do not take into account. And I've mentioned this before on the show. You had immigration happening. You also have asylum seekers happening. They're slightly different. You have people that are seeking like regular immigration flows, and then people that are looking to cross at legal checkpoints and sometimes without, just turning themselves over to Border Patrol and seeking to, looking to declare asylum. Those numbers were kind of kicking up, I think, towards the end. Well, I mean, there was an increase in groups, but when COVID hit, it wasn't until the invocation of Title 42, I've talked about this a lot, that allowed Border Patrol to turn people away regardless of their asylum request. They didn't have to pay attention to it. Nope. Pandemic, you're not coming in, get out of here. So they would send them back. The problem with that, the unintended consequence of that, and I think the administration was warned about this, was that because you had desperate people that were desperate and sometimes maybe not so desperate, maybe they were up to something bad, but they're trying to cross over. They get turned away by Border Patrol. They don't really have the funds to go back, especially if they're not from Mexico. And the vast majority of some of the people that were coming over that were desperate enough to cross illegally and looking to turn themselves into Border Patrol to declare asylum, they wouldn't get the go-ahead. They're out of cash. They can't travel all the way back to where they came from. They can't go all the way back to Central America or South America. So they just wait or find another way back in. The rate of these repeated attempts to cross went way up, way up. This has been documented. In 2023, the Title 42, when the emergency pandemic provisions were ended, the legal justification for Title 42 and just basically denying anyone's asylum declaration, that fell flat. There's no legal justification for it anymore because the pandemic emergency rules are over. And so you revert back to the pre-existing law that you had, which is our 1980 law. I believe it was written in 1980, which recognizes the UN's Declaration of Universal Human Rights, one of them being the right to declare asylum if you're fleeing a country that you believe is trying to kill you, one that's dangerous to you. And there's lots of different reasons how you can do that, how you can establish that. That's it. So there is a narrative, for whatever reason, and Doug seems to be sympathetic to it, that Biden made the border more open than ever. And that is demonstrably not true, because he took quite a bit of heat from pro-immigration reform people and progressives that wanted to see these changed and wanted to see a repeal of Title 42 sooner into Biden's administration. And Biden kept it in place. He kept it in place for the first 2 years. The Border Patrol had the ability to turn people away. So as far as what Doug's talking about in terms of like which one of these guys has the most in common with his principles? Well, Title 42, I think, went into effect in 2020. I think it was the end of 2019. Well, yeah, it would have been in 2020 because after the pandemic hit. And that's when that took hold. And then Trump got voted out. He got fired, and then he had to leave, but he didn't want to. And then, Jan 6 and stuff like that. So really, Title 42 was hardly in effect for most of Trump's active stuff. There were other ways of turning people down. Other emergency provisions were tried. They would go to courts. They would get overturned. They'd get revisited. They'd get reframed. It was a mess. But the Title 42 one stuck, and it stuck well enough that it stuck into, like I said, the first 2 years of the Biden-Harris administration. And then come January, February 2023, here we are. It came off. The demand to cross over went up, not just for people who were legally pursuing it, but people who were looking to declare asylum, both of which are legal practices. I should put that. But there were people willing to cross illegally to declare asylum. So Floyd also gives a thing here. This was on Discord. I didn't know he was on camera. Gotcha. Okay. Floyd, did you know that he was broadcasting? I know because he's been doing these lately where he's, he does chats in his Discord. It's relatively new. Does he tell you guys if he's live? I mean, does the room say that? I'm just wondering because it would be kind of weird to jump in there. Pragmatic Crystal has an article here from Carnegie.org, 15 minutes about immigration. Immigrants will take American jobs, lower wages, and especially hurt the poor. They don't. I went over that in the video. Immigrants, let's see. Immigrants don't take American jobs, lower wages, or push the poor out of the labor market. Myth 2, it's easy to immigrate here legally. Why don't illegal immigrants just get in line? It's very difficult to immigrate legally to the U.S. Immigration law is second only to the income tax code in legal complexity. That is very true. It is layered, tattered, complicated, and sometimes contradictory. Myth number 3, immigrants abuse the welfare state. Fact, immigrants use significantly less welfare than native-born Americans. And that is true. Thanks for those, PC. But Doug, I don't think, agrees with any of that. Doug is convinced more crime, drain on social welfare, taking jobs, hurting wages, hurting Americans, making America a worse place. We can't have them here. Get them out. Even better, don't let them in the first place. There we go.
I believe he lacks it more, but they tried to pass that border act, and Trump said, "Don't do it because it would hurt us at the elections. It would hurt the Republicans at the elections. We need something to criticize. So don't pass it."
I've heard that.
Yeah, that's what I thought, Floyd. I didn't know he was recording at the time. I thought it was just a Discord chat. I was a little surprised that it ended up on YouTube, but I don't mind. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for anybody, if anybody is in that, just, if you do talk with Pine Creek, there's a very, very good chance that if he can take it as a snippet and turn it into a short or a shorter video like this, he will do it. The thing that I'm wondering about here is if he's trying to make Floyd, because I don't know Floyd, and please feel free to clarify in the chat. Floyd FP and I don't think really had any extensive conversations. I think we've talked longer about whiskey and our different scotches than we've gotten into politics. Otherwise, we've usually talked about Calvinist theology and presuppositional apologetics. I don't think of Floyd FP as being left wing, just sort of left of center, kind of maybe slightly conservative. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I always think it's kind of interesting that if they've got this Doug has this kind of agreement with somebody, like, okay, because he didn't call Floyd woke. So Doug obviously respects Floyd more than he respects me. He just said that Floyd's an anti-Trumper. And that, I mean, maybe Floyd could be one of those never Trumper Republicans too.
That complaint many, many times. But the pushback on that complaint is, and Trump even said this during the debate, he didn't need any legislation.
Okay, yes, he did. So Floyd basically said, well, wait, Biden wanted to pass legislation and Trump talked Republicans out of it. I mostly agree with what he said. I've repeated this talking point too. I've actually got a little bit more, because I looked into this a little bit more. There were Republicans that didn't want that passed either. It turns out that particular bill was sponsored by a Republican, and his party kind of, shivved him. Shanked him, shivved him. I can't remember which one's the noun, which one's the, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, they kind of surprised him. They didn't want to deal with it because down ticket candidates need to be able to run on that too. There was a narrative that quickly came out, and even the White House repeated it, which I thought was kind of dumb. The idea was like, well, Biden had the Republicans right where he wanted them to be, talked him into it, and then Biden came along and said, I need that as a scare tactic and for fear mongering to run on, don't you dare. And they didn't. They fell right in line. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I think they could have passed it. I think a lot of down ticket Republicans, incumbents, were also sympathetic to that and were leaning that way. And I think when Trump kind of went public and was implying the same thing, it helped galvanize a lack of support for it. The shank is a verb. Okay. Yeah, the shiv is what you make. Shanking is what you do with it. Yeah, I'll always mix those up. Floyd says, I don't consider myself far left, more left of center perhaps. I'm a never Trumper for sure. I don't like the GOP now being a slave to Trump. Yeah. Hello peeps, good to see you, Simus. Nice to have you here. Also shout out to Peter Guns, good to see you as well. Okay, so anyway, he brings up this idea about this, and then he's like, well, hey, Doug's talked about this many times. How do you respond to the fact that Biden could have just done this with an executive order? Biden could not have accomplished the same thing as that legislation with an executive order, because with an executive order, you can't get the funding. Congress control. I don't know how he missed this in citizenship testing or whatever. Congress controls the checkbook. An executive order, you can do things to change enforcement. You can influence enforcement of certain laws, things like that. But you can't really do anything in terms of real funding, increases in funding for Border Patrol, for the asylum judges, any of that kind of stuff. The big stuff that they wanted to really make statistical changes. That can't be done with an executive order. You might be able to, with an executive order, move some people around to try to prioritize certain things, but that's a little bit like plugging that leak over here with this finger and watching water pouring on that side, and then you've got another issue to deal with. It's always better, if you can, to get this kind. If you know what you want done and you know it needs certain, a certain amount of funding, to get this passed through the Congress. If you pass it as an executive order, they get challenged legally, and they can simply be reversed when another president comes in. If you want to make some kind of lasting change, legislation is always the best way. But I think Doug just thinks that the president is a king and executive orders are just a declaration from upon high. And if he declares it so, there will be money that will flow into it. That isn't how it works. Just because an executive order goes out, it doesn't necessarily mean it's funded. That's up to Congress. Now, an executive order can go out to kind of get something started, and maybe Congress can follow up with it. But Congress had already said, at least the Republicans on the congressional side had already said, we're not interested in passing it. And Trump was clearly not interested in seeing anything change until after he's sworn in 2025, which also sort of betrayed the fact that if you think it's a crisis now, why are you forcing the government and the country to wait until the beginning of next year? That seems a bit hypocritical and irresponsible. Like they've been tearing the country apart since yesterday, but don't do anything about it right now. Wait until I get in so I can put that notch up on the board. Like, that's bizarre to me.
And the amount of illegal crossings was, I think, near a historic low.
Has Doug reverted to evangelicism? Not yet, but he's getting there. My brother told me that he has a conversation with somebody. I think it's his Discord conversation. He gets into it about abortion. And my brother was kind of fascinated with some of the rhetoric he was hearing from Doug on the abortion issue. Because I don't think that's an issue that Doug really talks about that much. Daniel Cooper says, well, after the recent SCOTUS rulings, the president definitely seems more king-like than before. Yeah. And the interesting thing about that is even if he wanted to do that, it doesn't give him the authorization, but I'm a little sketchy on that. But the one thing that it doesn't do is, even if he does pass an executive order, there's no funding behind it. Executive orders are always kind of tricky. So that's where Doug is just fundamentally wrong about that. If he's thinking like, oh, they're groaning about the fact they couldn't get this legislation passed, well, big deal. Biden can just make it happen by declaring it. He cannot make the equivalent of that legislation happen with an executive order. The only thing that he could do is do kind of what he did before, which was, we'll impose if it's averaging more than 2,500 attempted crossings a day for a week, then anybody after that 2,500, you're obviously screening that 2,500. The bulk of them are either going to be screened and then returned, or some of them will be released after they pass their screening. But anybody after that 2,500, no screening, no questions, no ifs, ands, or buts. They're sent back. He got to do that. But again, that's more of a direction in how they're going to enforce it with the existing personnel they had. No increase in spending involved.
And that's excluding the COVID year. So why could Trump do it and Biden not without any new legislation?
One of the things that had happened was, I believe there was a dip, but it had dipped in the last few years of Obama's presidency as well. Because Obama had deported so many people. A lot of the metrics that they use, customs CBP and other groups use to track the number of people that cross, or to predict the number of gotaways, which Doug did a video on that. A lot of that stuff was streamlined, or kind of formulated during the Obama administration. So that was one of those things that I think there was some inertia behind that, and it seems like the statistics show that it did start to tick up as Trump was in there, but the levels had been low for a while, and then COVID hit, and I think even in 2019 was decently high. It was getting higher. But then when the orders to stay in place and shelter in place and all that kind of stuff hit, that affected some of the numbers. And then demand started going up, because on top of what was happening with the COVID thing, you started having a refugee crisis in some of these countries. That will happen during a pandemic. And that was sort of like put on pause, and it built up and built up and built up. And then the floodgates didn't just open when Biden was allowed in. It started the intention to cross and things like that. I think encounters with Border Patrol increased, but their ability to just turn people away and just deny them asylum, that was still in place. They still had that discretion. So,
Yeah, I wouldn't know about that, but I do know that they had a bill, and that would have helped, and Republicans voted against.
I don't know what that reaction is for. Like, Floyd's at least admitting that he doesn't know. Doug is pretending to know something, and he's wrong. Biden could not have issued an executive order that would have been as effective as that piece of legislation. That's it.
Because it would hurt them at the elections.
See, but Floyd, you're a very smart guy, and it pains me when I hear you say, I don't know about that. Because what I said is true. Like, Trump didn't need to pass any new laws. He just enforced the existing ones.
No, they fundamentally wanted to change the asylum process. They wanted to do that. The whole Muslim ban thing ended up getting rejected on the basis that it was a constitutional crisis, essentially, and it got chucked out. Other ones did too, except for the ones where it was they would justify national security concern based on people coming from certain countries of origin. That worked a little bit, but not to the extent that the Title 42 did. If he's talking about this, like, the most successful process was Title 42. That one worked because it was based on the pandemic rules. And like I said, the Biden-Harris administration was to ride that for 2 years into their first term. If you go into right-wing news circles, and unfortunately I am known to do that from time to time, that if you listen to their environment, they cannot contextualize that happened, and they will not do that for their readers or their viewers. They will not talk about the fact that the Biden-Harris administration benefited from the Trump that Trump Title 42 executive order, which the courts backed up, and it stayed in place, and that the Biden-Harris administration took flack from immigration reformists and from people on the left in the Democratic Party and outside of it for betraying some of their campaign language, because they basically punted on the issue. They rode Title 42, allowed them to kick that can down the road a little bit.
He did some executive orders, which Biden is now doing. He's doing executive orders as well.
And what do they do?
He prevented a lot of immigration from coming across. Now, some people on the left.
He didn't stop repeat rates, and the numbers of injuries and deaths went up, because the number of people that were coming over, making repeated attempts, getting injured on walls, getting injured on barriers, getting injured during high speed pursuits. Customs and Border Patrol has information on all of this. All of that went up during that. It made it more expensive. It made it a little bit more fraught. It didn't necessarily save them any time or money. All that really got put into place is that Title 42 allowed Customs CBP the ability to deny asylum, because pandemic. That's it. Maybe Doug and Xerxes should do a collab. Oh, they did before. So they had like a little Cope Fest. I covered it, a year or two ago? Myth 4, immigrants increase the budget deficit and government debt. Yeah, no. Fact, immigrants in the United States have about a net zero effect on government budgets. They pay about as much in taxes as they consume in benefits. Yep. And there's another one there as well. The impact of Trump's immigration agenda. That's from U.S. News.
Left would say that that's bad. People on the right would say that's good because we want an orderly way. We want people to come through the port of entry.
Denying asylum is the opposite of having an orderly way. If you wanted an orderly way, you keep asylum, you keep the option to declare asylum open, but you increase the number of the ports of points of entry. That would be the best way to do it. And you increase the number of judges that can hear those cases. You increase the efficacy and the efficiency and the intuitive capacity of the apps made available to individuals accessing the application for asylum, application for immigration stuff in the Customs app that's available on smartphones. Because that was another thing that the Biden administration attempted to do. They weren't going to accept any claim. I can't remember when they tried to put this through. The goal was they would not accept a claim of asylum unless it came through the app. And I think that got rejected. I think a court took a look at that and said, no, you can't do that. There's nothing statutorily that allows this. Now, if you put that in legislation, you can get that passed, but you can't just make it so. So,
and I think Biden was forced to change through public opinion. What was it, a month ago?
Doug still does not understand this. For Christ's sake, Doug, he allowed the Title 42 asylum denial to stay in place for the first 2 years of his term.
When he reduced it.
Well, that's a good thing, right? It's like it went too far left, so Biden brought a little bit more back to center.
Yeah,
I would agree with Floyd, but he actually didn't. The problem is that for people on the left, he stayed too far right. They kind of cynically made use of Title 42 while still bad-mouthing Trump and his attempts, and in his sort of his xenophobic rhetoric, and we could get into an argument about whether or not it's xenophobic. If you say these people are poisoning the nation, poisoning the blood of our people, and are dragging us down, you're being xenophobic.
Yeah, but the thing is, to me, it's there should be as much as possible 0 people crossing the border other than a port of entry. 0. Like if someone comes to that line.
Well, if you've got people that are if you have people during a refugee crisis that are getting over, then you know that your capacity to handle legal checkpoints is being overwhelmed by the number of people that are trying to get through. Then you need to do something about that. There are solutions to that. Just keeping them away with a giant wall and then putting them in a backlog for 6 months to 6 years is not the solution. Where do they go? Where do they stay? You're violating one piece of law because you don't want to administer things at the border. You recognize with the 1980 law that they have the right to declare asylum, then you just prevent them from being able to do that. That's a problem. It's a legal problem, and it's an international problem as well. You're going to end up, kicking off a war, especially if you've got individuals from Venezuela, Guatemala, other parts of Central and South America, and you're kicking them back and forcing Mexico to deal with them. Like, no, they're not coming in here. You don't have to stay in Mexico, but you're definitely not coming over to the U.S. Maybe have you considered maybe going home? Like, yeah, if I go home, I'm going to get assassinated.
Line in the sand, they should be pushed back physically.
At the entire border. So you just want it. He wants this militarized from, San Diego to the Gulf of Mexico. You just have this, if they try to come in, they just can't. There's just a great big wall, and no one figures out a way over it. Okay. Or under it, or around it, because people come in those ways too.
They should not be allowed to cross the line and then scream the words asylum seeker. That should not.
Then what you want to do is fundamentally change the law. And the president can't do that. The president can declare a law. I mean, he could with a reason. Pandemic was a great reason. But he can't just say, you know what, I don't like this, no more asylum. No. There's already a law on the books, passed by the Congress. You want to change it, then you need to do something about that.
Not be allowed, because those are like magic words in order to get into the country for years.
Since at least 1980, my man. It's part of the UN Declaration of Universal Human Rights. Does he not know this?
And we don't know, we haven't done extensive background checks. We don't know who they are.
They do extensive background checks. They do. Except for the people that maybe get through and don't encounter somebody right away. If they ever get caught someplace else, they will do extensive background checks. That's one thing that happens. If they're coming in and doing what he just said too, if they come in here and get caught or turn themselves in, that's what they're looking for in most cases. They're looking for somebody who's Border Patrol. They're going to get caught. They're going to get charged with a misdemeanor, but they can then throw their hands up and be like, I'm seeking asylum. Take me in. Handcuff me. Let's do this. I want a court date. Let's get this going. So they do. They take them in. They process them. They run it. If they don't pass the background check, they're on their way back. If they do and they get a court date, if they pass those checks, they can get a court date. They are allowed to stay here until their court date. So if Doug wants to get this better, what we need are a lot more asylum judges to see those cases, to turn that over. It's still going to be like 76% are going to get rejected. If the legislation had passed, it would have been closer to 82, I think, was the estimate. The vast majority of the asylum cases would have been rejected under that new legislation. But they would have gotten their court date within 6 months rather than 4 to 6 years. Right now, I think the average turnaround is 4.25, I think one study showed. 4.25 years from the date that they're successfully told they can get a court date. They're an asylum seeker. They get that, and then they come in. On top of that, it could take them 6 months before they get approval as an asylum seeker here legally, before they're granted permission to work. And so until the federal government provides them with an asylum seeker work permit, they have to rely on charity or working illegally. Our immigration rules are fundamentally broken. But Doug's concerns about this have nothing to do with the actual real problems of it. If you really cared about immigration, you'd want more judges doing more screening. You'd want more points of entry. Your emphasis would be on more access at the border to screen people, not an emphasis on what he's saying, which is like, well, you can come through the points of entry that we have, and if you don't, there's a wall and a tank, and like Captain America is there, maybe the Hulk jumps through and, does whatever. Like, this is bizarre to me.
We don't even know if they're good for the country. Just because you're an immigrant is not a default position that you're good for the country.
Actually, generally speaking, it is. It's true that one individual could come in and be bad for the country. Let's say they commit a crime or do something like that. But generally speaking, immigrants, this is why I don't like his hypotheticals. Generally speaking, immigrants taken as a whole benefit the country they come into. On balance. Not nitpicking for the one that like makes things bad for everybody. This is not rational, what he's doing.
It might be good for them if they're truly fleeing persecution, but
if they're truly so it's not the case that they're coming from a country that's really bad for them. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I don't think that Doug has a problem admitting that there are countries much worse than the United States and a lot less safe. So, but he's skeptical if they show up and say, I'm from a country that's not safe. I have friends and family that have disappeared. I needed to leave, or otherwise it was going to happen to me. I got my 2 kids in tow. Oh, maybe not. Sure, you're from a shithole country, but I don't want to have to save your life, and I don't want to have to be part of a government that pays any money into a system to help you save your own life. F off.
It's not good for the country.
It is.
They might be a burden to our society for 20 years.
They're not going to be a burden for 20 years
Before they give back.
Asylum seekers generally start earning money almost immediately, and almost all of them are earning it illegally. If they're asylum seekers, when they get a permit to work, they're working here legally. They are here legally, and they are earning wages and they are paying taxes, and they have no representation because they haven't had their court date yet. He is completely talking out of his ass. He has no idea what he's talking about, but he's convinced that he understands the issue well enough. He's informed well enough to be principled when he's making a decision between Biden and Trump. Floyd was right. Floyd knew what was best for Doug. It's better for Doug, based on how immigration works, for Doug to vote for Biden over Trump, because Trump's the extra militarization of the border is going to make the optics even worse for someone superficial about this issue. He's going to react really badly to that, instead of doing something to increase the administration of the judges and things like that in order to speed this through. And keep in mind, we're 3 minutes in. I've been talking for way too much on this particular issue, but the immigration one always gets me, especially this ignorant take on immigration always gets me really ticked off. But this is his first reason. I'm going to vote for Trump because we're right in line with what we need to do with this. What's that? Is Trump going to gin up a pandemic to justify declaring Title 42 again? How is he going to get rid of asylum? He's going to have to change existing law in the country to say the U.S. goes against the UN's Declaration of Universal Human Rights. We don't believe that people have a right to declare asylum. We don't care where they're from. You can come in here if you got $5 million. If you got $5 in a sob story because you came from one of those S-hole countries, you're out of luck. That's what he wants. That is not going to lead to a better border. That just makes him feel good that he voted for somebody in power that is punching down on people who are looking to improve their situation by getting the hell. They're not necessarily staying here. They're just trying to get the hell out of where they were. If they come here and try to rebuild things, it doesn't mean they'll stay here forever. He's saying, oh, they're going to be a burden for 20 years. They're just on the dole for 20 years. That is not how it works. For some people, if they can come here, turn it around, make a better life for themselves, and things improve in their home country, they may go back. I don't know if this has ever occurred to Doug. Especially, I don't know if he's ever talked to individuals who are refugees from those countries, and they're like, I really want to go back to my home. I did not want to leave my home country. It's my culture. My friends and family are there. I left terrified of what was going to happen. And as soon as I have the ability and the means, I'm going back.
And or maybe not at all. So this is what I call the feel sorry forism for poor people. And I've asked this question.
Not all refugees are poor, Doug.
To many people, and I don't know if you've heard me ask this question, but I'll ask it to you. It all else equal, everything's the same. Imagine two human beings and you're the dictator of the United States. Everything's the same between these two people except for one thing. One has $5 million in their bank, the other one has $0. And the question is, you can only let one in. Who do you let in?
Well, I guess the answer is the rich person, because they'll benefit other people.
Yes.
Where the poor person would potentially be a drain on.
Correct. Now, what's your intuition?
I disagree with Floyd FP. I've given my answer to that question. You let in the guy with $0. If the only thing that you know about two people coming in is that one has 5 million and one has 0, and your primary concern is what kind of damage could they do to the country, you let the one in with $0 because he cannot possibly get up to that much. He can get up to less mischief than the person with 5 million. And if he tries to tell you like, oh, no, I swear to God, the guy with the $5 million, he earned it fair and square. No. That doesn't work. I can only take into account the two things. One guy's got money, one guy does not. That's it. I'm not going to get into which one has good motives, because the idea that, okay, well, the guy with $5 million earned it fair and square from whatever country he came from. Okay. He probably came from a country. Think of the dishonesty of this. He probably came from a country that Pine Creek does not like or does not trust. So this person earned that money fair and square in a country that is dangerous, evil, duplicitous, shady, whatever. It's a shithole country, according to him, according to Trump. But this person made a bunch of money. How does it follow that that person who earned that money fair and square comes here, doesn't get up to no good? because they did okay there, it follows that they will be okay here, even though they came from a place you don't like. And you're the one questioning their motives and their origins and all this stuff. That does not make sense. That does not make sense based on what they're doing. And for the thought experiment to work, if you're just imposing this on somebody, 5 million or zero, the zero. That person's going to show up. They're going to start working. They're going to need to start, they're going to have to hustle. The guy with $5 million, what does he do? He's a foreign national. We let him go to Florida. Doug's example and another example. Oh, he just wants to be closer to Disney World. Okay, so he buys up some Florida real estate, sits around and gets drunk in Orlando. We let him in. Why? Oh, well, because he's got that money, so he can buy stuff. So did the person with zero. They're going to have to buy lots of stuff as soon as they start working. They got to find shelter. They got to find food. Oh, but they're going to need charity first. And once that charity's spent, that's it. That's the blood of the nation getting poisoned right there. I mean, this is baby-brained horse shit coming from Doug.
Wish and tell you about the millions of people that have come across since Biden's administration. Do they lean more rich or more poor?
Oh, more poor, obviously.
Yeah. That's not a good thing for our country.
Well, don't we need?
Yes, it is. It does. Generally speaking, the immigrants that come in are good for the country, rich, whether they're rich or poor, unless you've got like wealthy, let's say, wealthy multinational companies that are looking to come in and buy up things like real estate or something like that. I don't think that Pine Creek has a problem with that. So, say, a Hong Kong, corporation, or one out of China, one out of South America. Let's say there's one out of Argentina or Chile. They've got the money and the means, and all of a sudden, actually make it even better. It's a company out of Mexico, and they got tons of money, and they buy up all the residential and commercial property of a small town in Iowa. Does Doug have a problem with that? None of them are residents, and none of them have attempted to cross the border. But their money did, and their money bought up a bunch of places, and now they're owned by foreign nationals. My guess is he doesn't care what that capital does across borders, but he cares very much about what people do when they cross borders.
You need like people that to pick fruit in the farms and stuff like that. Only immigrants will do that.
Yes, and I've worked with farmers in my own personal business who go through the painstaking task of getting the visas correct and bringing in people that they need, and they do it the legal way. They just don't.
Do you know what it costs? I think those are called H2A or HF2A. They're agriculture ones. I looked them up for Arizona because that's where he lives. It's a $100. I think it's a $100 fee to file for the application. And he can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I think I found on the website. $100 to file the application, $10 per worker that you want to bring in. Oh, it's so onerous. Oh, the burdens we put on government or on businesses. Oh, if we could just get government out of the way. Let's not talk about the fact that Smithfield Meat Processing over in North Carolina had an agreement with immigration that they would bring in X number of people that had crossed over here, asylum seekers, some of the people that were not caught, they were gotaways, bring them in on agreement that they would allow them to work for a probationary period of time, and they would turn over 1/3 to INS, and INS would process them and send them back.
Have people cross the border and pick them up and then bring them to the farms. Like there's some farms that do that, but that's illegal. And the reason why it's illegal and it should be illegal is because we don't know who these people are through the visa system. Then at least we have a better probability of knowing who these people are.
So, okay. So do the temporary agriculture worker visas not require background checks? Is that what he's saying? I'm not sure what he's talking about here. I thought they did. Maybe not. Hey, Aaron, not sure what you're saying, damn it, but let me know. Let me post this in here just in case anybody wants to join, if anybody gets good and fired up over this one. Join link is in the, I'm probably going to regret this. Every time I do this, a Tangelo shows up. We'll see. That is in the chat.
That during the weekend, they're not going to, go do harm to society. because, you know, they have this history in their former country of doing such. If we have at least background checks, security checks, like for me, the CIA or FBI, they know who my parents are. They went deep into my background. They asked for my bank statements when I crossed in and out. I've been vaccinated twice.
Only twice?
I mean, I went through so many hoops, and I don't regret it from the point of view from the American side. Like, the Americans did the right thing with me, and I'm asking the the administration to do the right thing for other immigrants. And don't feel sorry for them just because they're poor. This is the moral dilemma that I bring up.
They're not all poor. What the hell is he talking about? Not even the asylum seekers are all poor. Quite a few of them are. Floyd, how's it going?
Good.
Make room for us there. So, yep, since you've jumped in, I'll give you a chance to comment. What do you think so far?
My view is Doug is, making a choice the way you normally pick a political candidate. You have your position and you pick the person that most aligns with your position. So Doug's view is, okay, immigration, Trump, check. Taxes, Trump, check. Ukraine, Trump, check. Wokeness, whatever, Trump, check. Trump, check, 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 check. Yeah, that's how you normally go about picking a candidate. But in this case, Trump is anti-democracy. He's an anti-constitution. He's a felon. He doesn't respect the law. He incited an insurrection. He doesn't respect any of this. And all that other stuff is off the table. You'll say, well, I agree with Trump on Ukraine, so therefore I'm going to vote for Trump. No, I mean, Trump tried to take away our right to vote to begin with. All this stuff that Doug's talking about is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. We cannot have a candidate who puts his hand on the Bible and says, I'm going to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and says we should suspend the Constitution of the United States. That's my view. If Trump was like any other normal candidate, I think it would be okay for Doug to vote for Trump. But Trump is not that at all. He's a corrupt individual. He doesn't respect the law. He doesn't respect our military.
He doesn't respect Americans. I mean,
we cannot have someone like that in the White House. I think I might have said it in this feed. I'm not sure, but Trump would not be able to work as a cashier in the cafeteria of the FBI building because he couldn't pass the security clearance. Yet this guy, we're handing him the nuclear codes and putting him in charge of the country. It's a joke.
Right. Yeah. So your step then is, and I know this is Mouty because he says he's not a cult leader, and I know that's a lie. Good to see you, Mouty.
Hey, Chris.
Your take on it then basically is like, look, hey, you can go issue by issue, fine, but comprehensively, contextually, this guy is not even, you're comparing apples to apples, and this guy is like, he's a bushel of of rotten potatoes over here. Like, he's categorically different,
right?
Than other candidates you normally choose from. Yeah.
And
I'm wondering, did you ever get to that point in the conversation? Because at
the end, because Trump, Doug got me to agree with the issues. It's like, if you're a conservative, you vote for the conservative. I mean, that's normal, right? And I agree with Doug with that. If you're a conservative, you vote for the conservative. But I said at the end of the video, I said, but your priorities are out of whack. Again, we cannot vote for someone who is not going to uphold the Constitution, does not respect the rule of law, always trying to skirt the law. is just getting rich off of being, he and his family are getting rich off of being the president. Again, we cannot have this guy, this dangerous guy, in the office. He already tried to overthrow the last election. I mean, it's ridiculous that anyone would consider voting for this guy at all.
I think to me that's the weirder thing about it, is that because even if you think like Doug doesn't think that it's that big a deal, Jan 6 wasn't that big a deal. Like, it's a big, like, okay, taking the scuffles, the skirmishes, the violence that happened between the rioters and law enforcement there that day, the idea that a president was running on a narrative that he was not going to step down, that was the part that was dangerous. And that's that kind of just fundamental overarching narrative push coming from Trump. It seems to be something that either Doug doesn't get or wants desperately to ignore so that he can get into the weeds, like, hey, Trump and I agree about what should be done about the border. Check. Trump and I agree about like letting the rich keep their money and cutting taxes all over the place and deregulating this and that. Like, that thing that you said that was no big deal. It's a big deal if a guy gets into a contest and when he loses, decides that was the time to say he never agreed with the rules of the contest. That's and that's not a conservative. If you're a conservative and you uphold the Constitution, then you believe in the vote. You believe in the relinquishing power if the vote comes in, the Electoral College decides you're not it.
Yeah,
it's like does not give a shit.
Yeah, it's like we're playing chess with a pigeon, and the pigeon just comes over and just knocks over all the pieces. That's what Trump is. And
Doug does not have this. He doesn't have patience for people that pull that shit on him in a conversation online. But he's going to vote for a guy that acts like that as part of his campaign and as an issue of policy.
Yeah,
he has no problem with this bullshit artist doing that. Like, you wouldn't accept this.
And Doug said, "Oh, Trump won't be able to be a dictator. We have checks and balances. We never let that happen." That's like saying, "Oh, I'm not worried about a bank robber going into the bank. We have the police and the bank has a good security system and stuff like that." But why would you condone the bank robber to begin with?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We've got things in place that'll make sure that works. And it's like, no. Yeah. No.
Yeah. Trump's like saying, "I'm going to rob the bank. I'm going to rob the bank." And Doug's saying, "Oh, I'm not worried about that because, we have ways to stop him."
Well, what about the Project 25 shit?
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing too. Doug made a short, and it's a way too long clip of the kid from The Shining riding his trike down the hallway, and he wheels around that hallway, and the two creepy girls.
That was a big wheel, by the way, not a trike. That was a big wheel.
Okay, big wheel. All right. But the two girls, universally accepted creepy shot. The two creepy twin girls standing at the end of the hall. He replaced that with the Project 2025 logo. And I'm like, Doug, are you trying to say that everyone should be afraid of 2025 in the same way that we're all creeped out by those creepy twin girls? Or are you saying that only liberals are creeped out by the 2025 in the way that everybody, like, it was just a clumsy way of doing it. And I'm like, okay. So apparently, according to him, anyone that's concerned about 2025 is overreacting. That's the message that I got. That's what he was implying. So of course they're not going to do that. Like, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure they are. Do you know where they actually get a lot of the ability to do this, other than just corporate organization? There was a video that I watched. A friend of mine shared with me, or sister actually shared with me. It was statements given in response to to some kind of crisis. Basically, these ministers got caught being sex pests or something, right? And they had to give like a mea culpa speech. And both of them gave the same sermon, the same public statement. And so people came out and said that the one that came second, pun not intended there, he plagiarized the public statement of the first pastor. And they're like, no, it's actually worse than that. They both got the same rote script from whatever their church's denominational or interdenominational organization is, because that organization has resources for their clergy that provide them with pre-written sermons, statements that, you know, that they can use in the event of some kind of scandal and stuff like that. And normally you're supposed to take those and kind of massage them a little bit, fine tune them, personalize them so they don't come off exactly the same. Apparently these two guys just didn't do that. And so somebody was like, well, this guy's ripping off this guy. And I'm like, no, both of them are being provided with a script from, you know, Jesus Inc., the interdenominational group that they get their, like, you know, pamphlets and stuff from. It provides them their sermons and stuff. If they, you know, it'll even set them up with like pre-made podcasts and stuff like this. And the whole idea, the right-wing groups have been doing this for a while. They did it with ALEC. They had this kind of pre-set up way of generating basically the same kind of legislative push, but they would personalize it for different states based on different state statutes. And then they would send those out to Republican operatives, and then they would deliver those to state houses. And then the Republicans there would basically fine tune it and then put them through. It's kind of happened with some of the anti-trans stuff that's gone through, has been initiated from groups like that. And the Project 2025 thing is just a bigger outgrowth of that exact incentive. The whole idea is like, we have a template built in, people in place. Yeah, everything's we're going to hit the ground running, and everything's going to work like a, you know, like a finely fine-tuned machine. And it's like, I doubt it will, but that's what they're running with.
So is the argument against how bad the goals are, or is it against how improbable the execution would be?
I would say that it's both, but I think the latter is worse, because in America, the idea that conservatism usually brings is that we need to get government out of the way so that a private alternative, which would be better, can pop up. When the private alternative doesn't come and services languish, conservatives just basically kind of stand around. This would be the same thing that happened for 14 years with the Tories in England, because they kind of operated the same way. Gut NHS, gut benefits, do all this kind of stuff. You know, we just trim government down, you know, shrink it to the size of a baby so we can drown it in a bathtub, as Grover Norquist used to say. Then everybody will just profit because nobody's paying taxes to anything. It doesn't work, because the private sector will not come along and furnish services that are a net loss. If they can't make a profit off of it, they won't do it. So over time, what will end up happening, the implementation won't be there. It'll just be promises that, like, trust us, this is good for you. We'll Ayn Rand this shit, and you guys can bootstrap yourselves. And then when that continues to fail, we'll keep promising you more and more and more success, but it's just magical thinking. And then eventually they'll have to, then eventually they get voted out. I thought this was going to run out when Trump was in, and we were starting to teeter towards a recession in that first term. But then the pandemic hit, and the Republicans went along with efforts to, like, give money to people to keep people from going houseless and stuff like that. And so that, I think that sort of disrupted things. Republicans kind of acted like old school, you know, Democrats. You know, there's a lack of demand in the economy. Send people money, demand shoots up.
So I have a related question as well. I wonder what Doug would think of the wedge document from the Discovery Institute, right? Because being in the atheist community, that was like a huge deal. Like, I can't believe they said the quiet part out loud and they wrote it down. Everyone's familiar with the wedge document. I'm not, like, talking out of turns here.
I'm not sure what it is. I think I've heard of it.
So are you familiar with the Discovery Institute?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Discovery Institute, way back, maybe a decade, they put their ideas into a document called the wedge document, which was meant to be exactly what the title said. It was a wedge between church and state, such that church can be involved in state things, right? So they, you know, it lays out how, you know, we need to put people through the same programs as, like, the, you know, the scientists that we're arguing with, so that we have someone on the inside arguing for us. So that is the argument for Jonathan Wells, if you're familiar with him in the Discovery Institute. But regardless, this document came out, and they kind of had to play defense about it and be like, yeah, so, you know, we put it out, so what? But it pretty much lays out, we need to do this, then this, then this. We need to publish our own articles. That's why the whole movement of, like, Christianity version of peer review kind of came about. So the atheist community railed against that, because they thought, even though there was a low likelihood of it probably happening, they had enough pull. Like, they were sending people to the Michael Behe court case, whatever that was, Dover trial, right? So they were behind that, but they didn't get 100% into it because they didn't think they could win it. They're behind all of that shit. So I'm sorry I took such a long walk. all of that
No,
to say, as an atheist, if he's an atheist, if he felt about that was a problem, but he doesn't think that this is, I would be curious to know what the difference is. Both of them lay out an agenda that seems audacious and against most moral codes. So what's the difference?
And I would be willing to bet that he doesn't know anything about this. That would be if I had to bet money. Because I know
it is a deeper cut than I thought.
I had heard about this, but I didn't know it was called the Wedge document, but I knew that the Discovery Institute had this. So I'd heard about it from stuff that I'd read or things that I'd heard about online. I would be willing to bet that Pine Creek probably doesn't know. And I would also be willing to bet that if you suggested that he read it, he would say he doesn't care.
He would say what?
That he doesn't care and that he won't read it.
Okay.
He doesn't read.
Well, he doesn't read. So Doug's typically not scared of anything would be the short of it, not a cult leader. So when Floyd, great conversation, by the way, I think you were wrong in where you're pushing him because Doug's interests lie elsewhere than the things that you care about or maybe we care about. And I've got a couple points I'd like to make, but I think that when you did ask him at some point, was it towards the end of the conversation, he's like, see, I don't care. Or no, he didn't say I don't care. He said, I'm not scared that our justice system is in danger. I don't believe that our democracy is in danger. I think was that it?
Yeah, Doug's just saying that, Trump won't be able to serve more than, one more term because, he wouldn't be able to get the generals on his side and he won't be able to overturn the Constitution and stuff like that. But my point was, why would you support someone who would even want to try that to begin with?
Well, because of immigration, trans, and because of probably tax cuts and a couple other things. Like he doesn't, I don't think he lies too much, right? So he's pretty upfront about what his issues are, and it's men playing women's sports, it's people coming across the border. But I don't think he realizes the implications. It's kind of like the uncle at Thanksgiving dinner for me. Literally, this is so close to home, and that's why I talk to him, and that's why that I'm pretty opinionated about him most of the time. But the simple fact is, 1 second.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Okay, go ahead.
His fucking Applebee's steak's gonna go through the roof if they take all the Mexicans out of the country, because that's what Doug wants, right? Like mass exodus. Everybody, like if Trump gets in and he does what he says he's gonna do, and they round them all up and they send them back to Mexico so Americans can have all these jobs, chicken's gonna go through the roof, Applebee's through the roof, his greens fees at the golf course goes through the roof, his lawn stops getting mowed, his car wash is either twice as expensive or he doesn't have a car wash. The lady that does his manicure is probably safe because she's Korean and maybe has papers, but most of the people that are servicing, at least in the South, I'm not sure how it is about Arizona, but all of these things would suffer. And I don't think he thinks about the pragmatic level of what actually happens if the immigration's, because he only thinks about fentanyl, rapist, killing, and all the bad things about the immigration, which I think is extremely small.
Yeah, I agree with you. The problem that I had with this, and I was going to get into this point when he starts to move into something else, is that, like you said, it's the trans issue, it's the woke stuff, it's the immigration, but the way that he approaches, like the only one that is kind of close to being substantive and not a culture war BS take is immigration. Like I think that immigration does need to be reformed, the asylum processes need to be reformed. But the way that he approaches them, the whole it's detrimental to our society. They raise crime. They do all of the points that he comes at it with. Everything that's informed him about it seems to be the culture war aspect of immigration that comes from a right-wing narrative, rather than thinking of we do have the capacity to make this better. There are ways that we can administer this. And not only that, but a lot of the people that are trying to come in either through asylum or through immigration aren't allowed to. The majority of them are not allowed to. And many of the ones that get a chance for the asylum aren't allowed to stay. But he's still treating it like, even though we're watching multiple refugee crises unfold, he's acting like, no, he's totally in agreement. Like, no, Biden's let more people in and this needs to be stopped. It's like, dude, I would agree with you if I thought that the way you were talking about your issue reflected reality, but he's
right,
not.
which it doesn't. he doesn't
Right.
think about, so if there are a million Mexicans coming in from the country, I don't know what percentage he thinks, but he doesn't take into consideration the restaurants, the chickens, the Home Depots that are getting built. He doesn't take into, it doesn't seem like he cares or takes into account those people, because the U.S. economy thrives because of this, right? There's that age old like, oh well, they're taking American jobs. Well, if you go down to the local job places here, which we've driven by occasionally, it's a line of brown people, right? 99.9% brown people looking for this job. Americans aren't lined up to take the jobs at the chicken plant. They're not going to mow lawns. I mean, these are the jobs American wants. If we get rid of all of these immigrants or these illegal immigrants, the economy suffers, and it really suffers to where Doug's going to be pissed off because now his fucking lawn doesn't get mowed, his nails aren't getting cut and glossed, his chicken prices has gone up, the Applebee's, is probably closed because they can't get any kitchen help, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he only wants to talk about the same thing with trans. He only wants to talk about the culture war issues. He wants to talk about the bad, and when it comes to immigration, the good outweighs the bad tenfold, in my opinion, right? Like, it's very few people. Yeah.
The worst thing about immigration that I've been able to see in what I've read and what I've been able to study, the optics of it at the border, which have been made worse by trying to militarize a solution to it rather than increasing the number of judges. Like, I mean, the idea of increasing, like, I don't have a problem with increased surveillance, monitoring what's going on about who's going to try to cross the border, but making sure that you got people that are able to declare asylum, get a court case, get screened. If they don't belong here, if they've got a criminal history or whatever, send them back, or deport them, extradite them, whatever's going on. If they do have a chance, get them in, get them a work permit, and get started. Build something from there. The idea that you're just going to like be able to like push them all away, it's a little bit like gripping the soap too tight. It's just like that's not a solution to the problem. That's just going to make it worse. Because for every time you try to come up with that, like to me, it's better to actually have them come in and process them and deal with them then, rather than trying to like, well, Trump actually had asked, this came out, as one of his multiple advisors came out and said this. He wondered about building a moat that they could fill with alligators and snakes and stuff. Apparently he doesn't know that there's the Rio Grande is a thing, but he wanted to build a moat and filled it with alligators and snakes and probably lasers, sharks with lasers on their fins. Yeah, and they're like, yeah, that's not happening. We're not building a murder moat for you. Sorry.
But the reason that Doug gets so much traction are there people like, and my mother wouldn't watch him, and she's kind of been disenchanted with, I think they both are, but my mother once said, like, well, what was it? We're having this conversation 10 years ago for some reason, and she's talking about the illegals in the country. Meanwhile, and this was so lucky, it just happened while the 7 guys are mowing her lawn, right? And I think it was Esteban is the guy that had the lawn company. And I said, so you literally want to send every guy that's mowing your yard back, landscape company, right? I don't mean to discount them. It was just a landscape company that does wonderful work. And I said, you want to send them back to Mexico? And she's like, what are you talking about? They're all legal. And I said, you think because they're working and they have a job, they're all legal? And it had never struck her to think like, oh, because they have a job that they're legal. And Doug knows this, I would think, but most of the people listening to him, I think, don't think like that. They also think that Trump is going to build the fucking wall, right? Like, this dude's not building anything when he gets in, much less like I think mass exiting or deporting, because the people that are going to pull Trump's strings when he gets in or allow like him to do anything are going to say, no, the illegals run the fucking country. We can't deport them. We rely on these people.
Yeah. Well, let's get back into this a little bit here. I want to see where he's going to go next.
Just because someone's poor doesn't give them the right to live in this country, even to get help from us.
Nobody's saying it's because they're poor. They're saying it's because it's asylum. Because we recognize the right to declare asylum in this country. So if Doug wants that to go away, he has to change that or eliminate it. I don't get why he's got a problem.
We do not have the obligation to save every human being on this planet from death.
Agreed.
I know that's a hard pill for a lot of people on the left to swallow, but it's the truth.
Why would people on the left have a heart? Has he ever talked to a tankie? They're actively looking to terminate people. Like this idea that all leftists want to preserve everybody. He's confusing his libs with his leftists again.
In fact, you can ruin a country by doing such, by thinking you have to try to save, like Schindler's List. I could have sold my gold watch and saved one more Jew. You know, like there comes a point where that you can actually bankrupt the country by letting.
Okay, the Schindler's List reference is a little weird. Okay, yeah. I think that what was partially guiding Schindler's guilt, at least in the story of the film, is that he was a war profiteer at the beginning and saw the atrocities committed by these people and felt like he was doing something to kind of like, I don't know, mitigate that. He was part of the problem when it started out. Oh, Doug.
Getting in too many people in too fast.
You don't have a say in how many people come in during a refugee crisis. That's the problem. Mexico doesn't have that. The United States. I mean, when a refugee crisis happens for whatever reason, natural disaster. I mean, what does this guy think? Like, if Texas were to completely flood and all the Texans had to go someplace else. Hell, when Hurricane Katrina had this issue happen and they had to pull people out of the greater New Orleans area, out of there and move them into northern Louisiana and over into Texas. You don't think that was a lift? I mean, yeah, that's a challenge. They don't have any control over the number of people that get displaced in incidents like that. Sometimes you just have to adapt. You have to do something about it. This idea that, like, you know what will happen if Biden gets in, the current rate of asylum seekers and immigration happening right now is permanent. That is bullshit. And I think Doug might actually be convinced that there's something to that narrative, but it is bullshit. It does not follow that because we have lots of refugee crises happening now and a big demand for people coming over, that it is going to stay that way indefinitely just because Biden gets in. And if you don't get somebody like Trump in there to make everything really, really hard and really, really harsh for people, well, they're just going to come in here and take all the free candy from all of our kids. This is not a well-adjusted argument. Doug is, I think, fair to say. I think this is fair to say. This is framed on a deranged narrative. This does not make sense.
He's just so far removed from anything like this, Jefferson. I don't think he's ever. It'd be interesting, and I keep meaning to ask this, but the short of it is, like, I wonder, like, how is immigration apart from his process affected, right? It's obvious that he wants to close the door behind him. He struggled to get in. They went through all his records, so everybody else should, we should go through everybody else's records. They vaccinated me twice. Everybody should have to get the jab, right? Like, blah, blah, blah. But the list goes on of, like, woe is me, what they did to me. Everybody should have to go through this process that I went to. But outside of that particular process, how many, like, illegal immigrants has he ever met? How many immigrants has he ever met? Like, he's never been to the border.
Well, no, he lives in Tucson. He lives in the Tucson area of Arizona.
But he's never been to the border, because I remember when people were going down to the border and they were like, shit, there's nothing going on here. I kept saying, Doug, did you go to the border yet? And he's like, no, I haven't, But he never took the drive to see how terrible it is, yet he'll say, like, there's a fucking caravan coming of rapists and fentanyl addicts.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't disagree with, like, anything you just said, the last 5 minutes. I don't disagree with any of it.
Okay, so now if that's one of my main issues, and if I believe Trump is better than Biden on that, then shouldn't I vote for Trump?
No. In fact, I would actually say that, like, there were policies, like when Hillary Clinton, back in 2016, like, okay, well, you know what? Out of all the Democratic primary candidates, I really like that on this one issue, on foreign policy or immigration, Hillary Clinton, that's good. I'm going to vote for her for the one issue. And then somebody comes along and was like, I've heard you talk, and I got this other candidate over here that you probably agree with on like 9 or 10 issues. His name is Pete Buttigieg or Harris or Bernie Sanders, whoever. And I'm like, sure. shouldn't I, like, this is a weird example that he's trying to give. And I know he's trying to do the, like, well, why shouldn't I vote for Trump if Trump and I agree with this one thing on immigration? Because of the reasons Floyd mentioned. Okay, you might agree on that, but he's not going to accept the vote if it goes against him. That's why. like you should not, like, and he's a felon. Like, let's be fair. 20 years ago, the Republican Party would not allow somebody with felonies in the primary, let alone anywhere near the White House.
Doug doesn't think he's a felon.
Yeah, or like, oh, he's a felon in name only, or something like that. He doesn't care. Like, if Trump had committed 34 purse snatchings, would that have done it?
Maybe, but Doug is one of those people. He's one of those people that don't think he's a felon. When we talk about, like, I remember you had a conversation with Doug, and it's hard to beat your head against a wall for so long, because ultimately it's not about learning for Doug. It's not about changing a view when it comes to trans. He just thinks everyone's dead wrong, right? Like, so when he talks to Arden, he talks to you, and he talks to any various number of trans allies or people that are empathetic to trans community, right? He just thinks you're wrong. So you can say whatever you want to him. You can give him data. You can give him whatever. He thinks you're wrong. The same way that when you say the January 6th, he doesn't think it was a threat to democracy. I don't think he thinks it was tourist, but he doesn't think there was a coup, right? Like, he doesn't think Trump insinuated it. He doesn't think there was a coup. He doesn't think Trump tried to overturn the election.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what Doug's position is on, whether Trump's a felon or not, or if he committed election fraud. I don't think he's like a far right, MAGA person that thinks, the election was stolen and there was, all this, ballot stuffing and things like that MAGA people believe. I'm not quite sure if he goes that far.
I think he does dip his toe in it, because he's done shorts on trying to find out how much people are cheating at voting, and he has talked with T-Jump about not really caring about Jan 6. He doesn't think it's a big deal. Just shrugged his shoulders. They both do. They both don't care. Like, whatever, water off a duck's back. We'll be fine. So.
Yeah, but my gripe with Doug is that he thinks it's more important that a trans woman doesn't go into a woman's bathroom over Trump keeping trying to overturn an election.
Yeah.
So his priorities are just out of whack.
Yeah, and I don't really think that he gets it. So,
based on that issue.
If that's the only issue, that's the only thing you care about.
Well, let's take them one at a time. On immigration, you said you don't disagree with what I've said for the last 5 minutes. On that issue, who do you think is better, based on what I said, from my perspective, Trump or Biden?
I would say Trump, but
Okay.
but not by a lot.
Okay.
But if that's all you care about.
No, that's
I mean,
not
for
all.
me,
That's not all I care about. But I'm ticking these boxes off, and so based on immigration, you and I are both agreed I should vote for Trump, right?
Yes, if that's that's
Okay.
the only issue.
Okay, here's my second issue that I wrote down on my flashcard, and that.
see, I wouldn't have given him that. I would have been like, no. Like, no, it doesn't sound like it, because it sounds like you got more things to work through. I would have just made fun of him and been like, are you a single issue voter? Are you like these evangelicals that just vote for whoever's, anti-abortion, anti-birth control? Is that the kind of person you are, Doug? You're not looking at more than just that? You're not multifaceted in any way?
But again, we're at a point where Doug's just going down the checklist. Trump. And I'm saying, all that's fine. Yeah, if you side with Trump on those things, then obviously you would choose Trump. But there are more important things, like the preservation of our democracy and the Constitution, that clearly overrides any of these things.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the whole critical theory thing. I'm very, very against males competing with women in sports. I'm against males going into
Culture
women's
war.
Jeff, will
spaces,
you pause it for 1 second?
like changing.
Yeah.
The other thing I think that so like the 5 million, the immigrant with 5 million, the immigrant with no money. Doug's extremely just, I guess, good at walking someone into saying what they want, right? Like he just walks Floyd down the road, and if you're honest, at some point you're gonna say what Doug wants you to say, right? Like the position he does, because we're gonna say, well, right, I'd choose 5 million over a rapist, Doug, right? Like that's just crazy. The
Yeah.
same way that the right, he just, and I think Doug has fun with this, and he gets a kick out of people saying what he wants them to say, right? That's the whole. There's a part of street epistemology that's,
Yeah.
right, leading someone into questions, leading them down a road, getting them to admit this, and Doug enjoys that. He did it for years, right? Like it's hard. So there's also that side of Doug. You have to remember.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good to see you, Fabio. How's it going?
Hey, it's doing fine. Sorry, I mean, I just saw it. I just hope I'm not late. It is adorable, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, you get to watch. At least you get to watch from where you are what happens over the next few months in American politics. So.
Oh, I'm having a laugh. I mean, there are a couple of things. First of all, and I'm sorry if I just step in. Probably not really on topic, but there are a couple of things that actually 3 things that I would like to say. The first one is that all this, shooting thing, to be totally fair, I don't know how much of a shock was it in the US. It was no shock for the rest of the world. I mean, let's be fair. You guys have a shooting every other Sunday, right? So, really, I mean, and this was pretty lame in comparison. Nobody. Well, one guy was killed, but it was. I mean, not the guy was aimed to.
That was kind of how I felt about it, because the reaction was, I'm like, look, I think it was really only a matter of time before a spree-style killing in the United States happened around a presidential candidate or some political candidate, and that's essentially what this was. You had a 20-year-old guy with a gun.
Yeah.
He had an opportunity and the means, and he took it, and fortunately killed. He may have killed 2 people. I think the second person is in critical condition still. So I don't know if they've.
Yeah, but it's not exactly news, right?
No.
I mean, as
the only thing that was new is that he was taking shots at Donald Trump.
As per the US standards, it's pretty lame, to be fair. The second one is, the massive failure of the US educational system. Because you guys start shooting in junior schools. That guy was 20. He couldn't shoot for shit. So that's another thing. I don't know. Maybe it's too soon. I don't care. But I think it's super funny. And the third thing,
we don't have classes about shooting here, right? You know that, right? It's important to me that
I don't know where you live, but we absolutely do have classes. Hey, look, did you all watch the background? Did you watch the people behind him when this was going on? It was insane. If there were, like, while the shooting was going on, if you watch the bleachers, people are standing up, like, looking around. They're on their phone. Like, it's absolutely insane that, like, I don't know, 20 people hit the deck.
In a way that doesn't surprise, because that was in Butler, Pennsylvania. It was rural, and it was out in the middle of nowhere. So for some of that, I think for some of the people that stood up at first, I don't know about you guys, but in rural parts where I'm at, you can hear gunshots especially during like hunting season. In places down south, you can hear gunshots all the time if you're out in the countryside. I don't know what it's like an hour north of Pittsburgh, but I thought some of that was that. So it did seem weird, because like if that were in a city and you heard shots ring out, you see almost everybody just hits the deck. Everybody drops or runs.
Yep.
They scatter. You do not see people standing up with a hat like mine, rubbernecking, like, oh, where's that coming from?
You're making a lot of excuses. That guy was That guy was pro Second Amendment. He was right. I mean, he had his right to shoot anybody. So fuck yeah. But the third thing I want to say is that when I say that Doug is adorable, I really think he is adorable. He really is a product of the kind of idea that it seems to me from the outside that you have in the US. And I will just explain it a little bit. I'll try to be short. Just cut me off when I get too boring.
I'm bracing myself. Yeah, bracing.
But my idea is that you guys, I mean, starting from all this, two-party system, which is mental, but it seems to me that you guys have the idea that whoever wins rules. I repeat again, whoever wins rules.
Right.
That is mental. It doesn't work that way. Whoever wins in a democratic election governs. It doesn't rule. It's not that if I get 51% or 50 plus one vote out of 30% of people which actually vote rules their ideas.
Right.
They govern for all the population of the country.
Yeah.
It might sound subtle, but this is mental, seen from the outside. And Doug, I mean, I'm not blaming Doug. I really think he's adorable. He's a product of that fucked up idea that, to me, and again, if I'm wrong, you guys shout out, tell me I'm wrong, I'll shut up, I'll get it. But from the outside, that is exactly what seems to be happening over there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's plenty of people over here that have talked about the idea of doing some kind of reform and getting something close to like parliamentary reform, more parties involved, coalition governments, that kind of thing, rather than just this kind of two-party stalemate that we've got. And that attitude. And the attitude has been increasing. There's a good one. The idea that these guys are supposed to be representatives, they're supposed to represent us and govern us. They're supposed to be administrators. That's not supposed to be this hot position. It's not supposed to be this claim to power, because they're not supposed to be governing us. They don't get to do whatever they want. You basically get to be in charge of governing the country and administering things, making sure things run right. It's kind of supposed to be boring. And yeah, for whatever reason, the Republicans are always making it into like this existential crisis. We have to get in there. We have to get rid of the woke leftist Marxists because they're dragging the country down. And when we get in there, we'll have the mandate and we decide what's right.
I'm sorry, Jefferson, and then I'm sorry because I think I cut out Sean before, but you'll be making a mistake if you speak only about Republicans. No. It's both of them.
Yeah, both. I mean, well, that's happening.
I mean, you guys right now have a choice between a sociopath and an Alzheimer patient. You guys are fucked. You guys are so fucked. You have no idea. Right?
You're right about
the last thing
hang on, I wanted to just interject because the Biden thing, I agree with it, because that's sort of the same thing. The idea that an individual personality is so important to run things, to govern. And that's even been his defense. Like, I know better. I know how to do this stuff. Who else could do it better than me? It's like, that's not the point.
Oh,
it's like you're not supposed to be embracing that, and they're embracing that now. It's like, if you want to present an alternative to the Republican frame of mind, you need to do a better job than embracing what you're doing. The cult of personality thing, you're way too late to get in on that. And your approval rating is way too low.
No, I agree. I mean, and you would be right if not for the fact that I think it was 2 or 3 days ago that I heard Biden say, no, I'm really good at my job. And it says something on the line that God should come and tell me not to do that. I mean,
exactly.
Really?
Terrible.
Man, listen, not even the Pope says that.
All right.
And I'm sorry. I think I cut off Sean a little bit before. I'm sorry about that.
Sean, did you have anything to add? Or
Fabio, I think you're absolutely right, but probably for a few different reasons. I think it's about winning for each side. It's about being right for each side. Like, we're right, you're wrong. American politics over the past 10 to 20 years has gotten so strange to me because it is about that cult of personality, because the American people wrap up so much, especially now, right? Like, and then I think Americans, there's so much wrapped up in this like Christianity at the moment on both sides, right? Like Jesus is love on the left and Paul, whatever you want to call it, on the right, that they truly believe that whoever wins was what's the verse about like Jesus being king, or like not being king, they believe that it was scripted by God, right? Like whoever's president of the United States, that God wants to be president. So there's a little bit of that. So they, yeah.
Daniel Cooper makes a point. Is Fabio, the Pope doesn't have term limits.
Well, that might be true. That might be true. But we had a Pope which resigned recently, so
At least he did that. Yeah.
there is that.
All right. Let's.
I mean,
check out
I still have to see a U.S. president, especially Trump, resigning. So my point stands.
yeah, we've only had it with Nixon, and that was because
can't
he was on.
We
his
can't
way
even
out.
get him to resign from running. Like both
Yeah, right?
parties didn't go look.
Yeah,
Look
he
at
just
it.
he just has to turn down the
Right.
the upcoming nomination. Like, just bow out of the race. So you're going to be in until January. Just let somebody else take it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Rooms, bathrooms, and I understand that's complicated and there's so many other issues to think about. But given that, who should I vote for, Trump or Biden? Who's more likely to let a woman federally, to make a law or whatever, to let a male go in women's sports? Who's more likely to allow that?
What? So this is a big enough issue for him that he's going to make this be like a make or break issue. He's going to elect the corrupt felon, because that guy is on a play. And the interesting thing about this is that I don't think that like Trump talks a big game about like, we're going to get rid of the trans stuff and the woke stuff and the DEI stuff, but he's not as vocal about that as the Project 2025 stuff, to the point where in the platform, the RNC platform, the GOP platform, they struck the language for gay marriage. He didn't want that in there. He thinks it's kooky. If the tide shifts, and it has been shifting, where where the public is more accepting of trans individuals, Trump will do that again. The people that are running Project 2025 are not looking at that. They will not give that up. So this is kind of interesting that he's bringing that up. Like, well, he's going to be the one to stop that. The only way he's going to be able to do that is with Project 2025. If it's popular to no longer do that, he's going to want to cease doing that, and the people around him will not. And despite what he seems to be doing, somebody mentioned it in the chat, you're voting for a team. And Trump is coming in, he wants to come in with a team that's from Project 2025, the Federalist Society, all these think tanks. They want to make sure that this stuff is in place. So
And look, all they need to do is give that dude, "You're the best" at Diet Coke, and he's going to sign whatever they want him to sign. That's why Trump's so dangerous, is because he doesn't give a shit about any of this stuff. He just wants the admiration. He wants the whatever the narcissistic bullshit that goes on in his head. That's what he wants. So what's dangerous is that these people that truly have designs for our country are going to have access to that. And the fact that is he not able to name a couple more judges? Am I right in that? Like that's those are the two things that really worry me. Is he can put a couple more judges on the court, and then the people that are manipulating him are fucking terrible.
Yeah, well, he can't add two more. Congress my understanding is Congress would have to pass a law to increase the limit, but he can replace the two that are planning on retiring if he wins.
Right, I'm sorry, that's what I mean. Right, like so. Yeah, that's trouble.
Yeah, that is trouble. But in the Project 2025, I've been going through it bit by bit, and Project 2025, one of their legislative goals is to revisit that law, increase the limit to either 11 or 13, and then have Trump appoint even more conservative justices on there, making it an extra super duper majority. Yeah, so
9 fucking conservative 90-year-old justices in like 30 years. Still, we'll just waiting for him to fucking die.
They'll shoot for the younger ones. They'll go for 40 or 50-year-olds. That way that they've got like at least 20 to 40 years. That's what they're shooting for. It's already coordinated. It's in the game plan. So, oh yeah, you know what? That link is probably gone. Forgot to tag that. All right, let's get through the rest of this. So we've gotten through immigration. Now he's getting into like women's sports, which is
To support
useless.
that, Trump or Biden?
I guess Trump is that really handled at the federal level? I mean, I agree. Gender,
Title IX.
as the left say, gender is not sex. And when it comes to sports,
I don't care about gender when it comes to sports and changing rooms and stuff. I could care less.
Right. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I agree. It should be about sex.
He hasn't discussed it that way. He seems to care about those issues quite a bit on his channel and in the shorts that he makes.
Right.
Not gender.
So now if it's
You-
about
you would-
sex, and I don't want any legislation like Title IX, the changes that the Biden administration made to Title IX, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but basically it is more likely now that males can compete with females in sports. Now I'm against that. So Trump has said that if he becomes president, he will not allow males to compete against females in sports.
Why would you want the federal government making a declaration on that just as a blanket thing? Why wouldn't you leave that up to the sporting organizations?
And Jefferson, more than likely, at least my limited knowledge, they've already started to make these decisions, right? Like the Olympics are making their decisions, other organizations are making their decisions. And it's odd to me that Doug doesn't realize that, one, Trump doesn't live up to anything he says, but two,
Yeah,
I don't think Trump has the power to like that. That would take some serious work for Trump to actually say, I'm not going to allow this to happen. It's not as easy as though I can just, wave my presidential wand and make it happen. Like he can't, I don't think he can do that, can he?
I don't know. As far as I know, Title IX has to be changed by Congress. So it wouldn't be something that Biden could just declare or something like that. They would have to they would have to alter that law, and that would require like a legislative push. So, but I don't understand the concern that I like of all the things that he's talked about before in the past about, oh, there's these people going into, I don't care about the dressing rooms, I don't care about the public restrooms, but I do care about sports. That's where I draw the line. Okay, well, a lot of people on the other side care about the sports issue too, and they care about whether or not people are being discriminated against. And are you just going to? Doug seems to be comfortable with the idea that Trump just declares a law like, nope, we're gonna base this entirely on sex, not gender. No ifs, ands, or buts. I'm the expert on this, and that's it. That's a goofy way to approach this. But most of the way that Doug has talked about these kinds of political issues has been goofy to me. How's it going, Steph?
It's going.
Isn't that a normal, like American, like just ignorant to how a lot of this stuff works? When Trump gets up there and says, hey, I'm going to take care of this trans issue, right? I'm going to take care of the immigrants. I'm going to take care of the trans. I'm going to take care of X, Y, and Z. They all jump on board and they go, woo, Donald gets elected. The first day, all of our problems are solved. But I don't think it works like that. And it's odd
Yeah, well, it's okay usually political candidates, presidential candidates will talk like that in a shorthand. I mean, they usually mean it's their team or they're going to try to work it through Congress or something like that. They're going to get it done. The fucked up thing is that it's not a good thing to actually even campaign on. Like the only reason Trump's doing it now is because it's red meat for the MAGA base. But he's not even willing to even he doesn't even want to entertain the LGBTQ like issues in terms of like gay marriage and stuff like that. He wanted that off the RNC platform because it's a loser. Even he's like, we don't need that on there, to the point where Mike Pence was disappointed in this and others. So you kind of see this kind of just superficial, Trump's superficial approach to this issue. I don't think he gives a shit. It's just like he can call out whoever the enemies are and the other ones, he pick winners and losers essentially out of this. But the idea that Doug is concerned that like, oh, well, we need a president to weigh in on this. You would need legislation to weigh in on this. If you've got rampant discrimination against individuals, that's where they'd need to weigh in on. But if he wants the president to be, like you said, Sean, there's already organizations trying to work through this. Some of them have made good decisions. A lot of them have made really bad decisions. But yeah, the idea that they want to go backward is crazy.
What's interesting is, to me anyway, with regard to Title IX, Trump tried this in his past administration. It's specifically Health and Human Services tried to write a regulation into and put it in the Federal Register in 2018 that sex was immutable and observed at birth. And so therefore, as regards trans people, you're kind of stuck with what what was observed by an obstetrician at the time of your birth. And the way what's really interesting is that in the Supreme Court's decision in basically overturning Chevron deference, they basically left it open for anyone to sue a regulation, and regulations are done by no, it would not require Congress to act. When a federal agency promulgates a regulation, that's what Trump was trying to do in 2018. He'll do it again. But with the recent Supreme Court decision vis-a-vis Chevron, they're basically overturning Chevron deference. They've taken up the position of being the arbiter. The courts are not the. So anyone can bring that kind of a suit, saying, well, the agency got it wrong, and that's what's going to happen. It's like and that's what's happening, right? It's the legislation there are challenges now to the Title IX decision, the Title IX regulations that the Biden administration put forward. The state of Texas is saying, "Oh, fuck that noise. We're not doing that. We're not. We don't agree, and we're simply not going to follow the Department of Health and Human Services regulations." And this is the outcome. This is basically the outcome of the recent decision. I can't remember the name of the case, but overturning Chevron deference.
Yeah.
And every court that's reviewed it so far has, with the exception of one case in the fifth district, has basically said, no, we're doing Chevron deference. We're saying HHS is bringing the Title IX regulations that are written into the Federal Register by the Biden administration. We're bringing that into conformity with the court's decision in Bostock, wherein gender is intrinsically linked with sex when it comes to the when it comes to the civil rights, and when it comes to Title IX, when it comes to Title VII, right, in employment, which is all about employment discrimination. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. So now they're bringing it into conformance with in Title IX. It's kind of an administrative thing, but with Chevron deference gone, it's a whole new landscape.
Because even if those district courts decide, like, no, that's fine, it can stand as it is.
And so
they can always push it to the Supreme.
Yeah,
they can push it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has the ability to revisit it. Yeah,
has an ability to revisit it, and it's that's the legal landscape, and the actual landscape is the people on the ground that are getting affected, or we're all bobbing on the tide too, and waiting to see what happens. But what we're dealing with here is a project of an I hate to use the word, but an ideology that is focused against people, individual people that are, are a grist for the mill of conversation, and it really is kind of discouraging.
Well, I mean,
That's
for
kind of all I
for
wanted to
the
say.
yeah, for conservative Christian ideology, especially the stuff, the Christian national stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody in the
So anyway,
LGBTQ community, was the bête noire, and now it was interesting to see where Trump was just like, yeah, you don't need to do the gay marriage thing, and even they were just like trying to claw that back, like, no, we're conservatives, we want to go after that too, and Trump's like, it's a loser. But as far as like, it just the targeted number of people is being reduced, but I feel like the intensity of
and so it's really fucking funny to sit here and listen to Pine Nuts drone on and on about a particular gripe he has with a particular community, and hey, let's just blah 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 blah. But someone on the panel was saying, well, can he do it? Yes, he can. Yeah, he actually can. You can write you can write stuff into the Federal Register and have it be an interpretation of a statute. It may be a bad interpretation of the statute, in which case it's going to wind up being, challenged. But yes, he can. There has been until the recent Supreme Court decision, there has been broad latitude for the executive to interpret an enabling act of Congress, whether it's the EPA or, in this case, HHS. There's been broad latitude for the courts to give presumption of the expertise of that federal agency, and now that's gone.
Yeah.
So what they're relying on is the inherent conservatism of the courts, and the judicial system is a fucking mess in this country right now.
Yeah. Yes, it is. All right, let's see if we can get to his third point, because I thought he was going to make three.
My 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
And other issues like changing rooms and that sort of thing. So based on that second criteria, first was immigration, second is this, who should I vote for, Trump or Biden?
Trump.
Yeah. So we're 2 for 2. Okay, war in Ukraine. I'm against the war in Ukraine. I don't think there should be funding for the war in Ukraine. Who's more likely to give
the fuck not? Jesus Christ.
Ukraine more money? The Biden administration or the Trump administration? And the same holds true for Israel, by the way. I'll lump them together.
Well, Biden would support Ukraine more, but I mean, isn't Trump all in with Israel though?
I would say he's all in through ideology, but
he would fund he would increase funding to Israel. Doug is hedging for no good reason here.
When it comes to money and supporting like giving money for free, no.
Yes.
BB's home in New York is the Kushner's. Come on.
Good Lord.
Let's
What on earth has he been smoking? Of course he's going to give them money. He's going to give them even more than Biden has. Holy fucking shit, Doug. Oh my God.
But even I said lump them together, but even if you said with Ukraine, Biden's more likely. So based on that, I should vote for Trump, right?
So you're more like, we've only been giving money to Ukraine. The levels of aid that we've been giving to Ukraine at this point have been because Russia invaded them. We have been propping up the IDF for a very long time, and Trump would make that even he's running on it now. He made a big deal about the fact that he changed the embassy around, and I believe he increased military funding to Israel. As long as it's not Ukraine, I guess Doug's fine. Even though he mentioned both, but
yeah.
And I could keep going like this, Floyd. And at the end of it, you're going to say, okay, Doug, if these are your values, this is what you want. You have my blessing. Vote.
No, that's not what Floyd said. That's not what he explained to us at the top of this. Like, yeah, you could go through, you could check off every single issue. Doug could be 1-for-1, a match with every single issue that Trump gets to, but not get to the, I hope I'm not talking for you, Floyd, but not get to the central part. Like, he's fundamentally unfit to be president.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's one whole thing. You can agree with Trump on everything. It just comes down to Trump is unfit to be president. He's not supposed to do what the president does: follow the law, enforce the law, uphold the Constitution, keep free and fair elections running, and all those things. Trump's just against basic American principles, what the Constitution stands for. So yeah, right. Trump's, Doug's just saying, okay, this issue check, this issue check, this issue check. Again, all that's irrelevant.
Yeah, it'd be like saying, I was really surprised. I was talking to this guy and we agreed on everything politically, absolutely everything. Like, oh, would you vote for him for president? Or, for senator? Like, no, I can't. He's a serial killer. Like, yeah, great. You guys agree with each other politically. Is he fit to be a senator? No.
Vote for Trump.
Right. And again, I'll fall back what I said at the beginning, that it is still not in your best interest, and it might seem arrogant, but
I just gave you 3 things that's in my interest that I'm
Doug's still missing the point.
Interested in. You conceded all 3 that I should vote for Trump.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure he misses. I'm not sure he misses the point. Like I think he's just, this is that railroading he likes to do, right? Like, he knows what Floyd's point is. But the bigger issue is he's walking Floyd down the road to say, yes, as a Democrat, I'm telling you to vote for Trump, because that's what Doug wants ultimately, is to clip that. Look at this Democrat that just told me I should vote for Trump.
Yeah.
There is a really simple way by which Trump can change his idea on Ukraine, and I'm astonished Zelensky doesn't think about it. He should hire Blackwater.
Yeah, I mean,
guess who pardoned Blackwater for what they did in Iraq?
But here's the thing: would Eric Prince and his boys actually go to war against Putin? They've got friends there.
I'll say again: guess who pardoned Blackwater operatives for what they did in Iraq?
Trump.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'm going to shoot an email to Zelensky tomorrow or tonight. I don't know. I mean, I tell you, what? Hire Blackwater. You got support. There it is. I mean, it's amazing. You guys are amazing.
Just make sure to remind, like, hey, Zelensky, tell that idiot Prince, too, that he can't back out of this. Like, we're paying you to fight. I don't want any of this crap where he can't pull the trigger on a fellow Christian or whatever. You go get him now.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
And I'm saying that those are bad priorities to have. That's what I'm saying. That things like the protection of our democracy, protection of national security,
but Floyd,
government corruption.
Floyd, you can't just
weaponizing.
You can't walk
the
up
Justice
to
Department and stuff like that are all critical and more important than any of those things that you just.
Okay, but Floyd, what you just said to me, those are bad priorities. You mentioned saving our democracy and whatever. I don't believe that our democracy is under threat in the way you do. I don't think that if Trump wins, our nation's going to end as the way we know it within 4 years, and that Trump will be a dictator.
Okay, that's where he ends it. All right. Well, so yeah, it's just, I'm not scared. It'll be okay. Don't trust your lying eyes. It'll be fine. Don't read Project 2025 either. Or if you're not interested in reading Project 2025, don't bother with it. Just go to Trump's website and watch the videos Agenda 47, which is kind of a scaled down version of Project 2025, is done in videos. Trump just like presents videos on each. There's like 46 of them. There should be 47, but I think there's only 46 videos. And they do have transcripts, so you can take a look there. He's got some interesting ideas about what he wants to do about college accreditation, which I'm pretty sure he only cares about because he got sued over his bogus college. But yeah, if you wanted to, Agenda 47 kind of equals Project 2025, except that it's more of the emphasis, I think, is a little bit, it's issues that are near and dear to Trump's heart. So,
but it's actually Trump doing the videos, right?
It is. He's
Okay.
individually reading the transcripts. Yeah. So,
Every time I bring up the project, people are like, "Nah, he wouldn't do that," and I'm like, "There's very little of him talking about it. Really, it'd be good to have those videos."
I think it would be kind of cool to actually, if you took the transcripts from all the videos and compiled them into one document, and then got 2025, matched them up into a PDF document, and then did a kind of search or built like a language model to kind of look for matching phrases, match. I think you would see a lot of the same points. But some of the language in 2025, a lot of the stuff in 2025 is really, well, it's not even called Project 2025. It's technically called the Mandate for Leadership. And a lot of it is super wonky. There's stuff in there about how they're going to fundamentally change the Department of Treasury. Stephen Moore has some articles in there, and some of those are really not, those would probably not be great. The stuff that they want to do for soldiers would be horrible. What they want to do to the military in terms of like reduction in pay, reduction in benefits, denying care when they do have healthcare benefits, it's bad, really, truly bad. Like I think it would. The only way you would do that, as far as I can tell, based on what I saw, would be to drive professional soldiers that you have into the arms of private contractors. And
Sure.
only the most desperate people are going to go into the military.
Well, it's delivering the United States government into the hands of private people who, who the dictator trusts. That's it. I mean, look, Trump's not going to live forever. I mean, he's 3 years younger than Joe Biden. He's not going to live forever. He's not going. It's like, no, this isn't it. The issue is not it's not those two men. The issue is the two ideologies. That's the issue. And you have this interesting phenomenon where you're seeing people on the right, Trump, going to deliver the keynote address at the Heritage Foundation that produced Project 2025 under the supervision of the man who ran the White House Office of Personnel,
Right.
For Trump, and he is going out of his way to deny that that he has any knowledge of what's in that document. He knows full well what's in that document. He knows full well what the building of the tailwind is with the Heritage Foundation. It's like, come on, dude.
I would push back on it a little bit that he knows full well. I think he only knows they give him the Cliff's Notes. That's it. That's as much as he knows. Okay. He's going to leave a lot of that up to his...
I'm not sure he knows what's on his cheeseburgers. So yeah, the fair point. But really, this is a project, and Trump is the figurehead, and everybody blows smoke up his skirts just to keep him there, because they haven't quite figured out who the next guy is. But they could very well figure out who the next guy is. Oh, well, President Trump the assassination on President Trump has left him quite rattled. So let's just have Mike Johnson do it. And Mike Johnson's such a young, vigorous Christian man. That there's, however, it's the by hook or by crook thing that the right is into.
Yeah, it's
that the Democrats just don't have the fucking stomach for. And by God, we really ought to find the stomach to do it.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thanks everybody in the panel for showing up. Thank you all for being on here. I'm going to get out of here because we're about at the 2-hour mark, so I got to get going. But thank you everybody in the chat. Thanks for covering this. I'll probably be back to do, like I said, to cover some of the attempted assassination news when there's actually more news to talk about. Because like I said, there's a ton of speculation going on right now. So with that, we're going to get out of here. I'm going to say goodbye to the chat. Thank you, everybody, for keeping it lively, keeping it fun. But yeah, 2 hours, we are out of here. So I'm going to play us out, and I will catch you all later. Hopefully I will see you all early next. Well, actually, technically it is this week. I will probably be back on Tuesday. So take it easy, everybody. Good night.
Ciao.
Oh, and a special thanks to Floyd FP for coming in. Thank you for doing that, because he was Doug's conversation partner. So, all right. Good night, everybody.